streaming. It seems to be working. Okay. We should be going live. Yes! YouTube says we're live, so I can only presume that we're live. So, hello everyone. We are actually streaming today, and I say we because we have a guest voice actor and narrator, Deft Funk. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Greetings, mortals. I am Deft Funk.
Would you like to tell people how they can find you and your media?
Me?
Unless you want to remain, undercover.
I'm a man of mystery. What can I say?
Just sometimes
sure
pops up on random shows to read random stories. He'll just evaporate into the shadows.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, everybody knows me, or used to know me. I'm Free Homebrew, and I run this show. I want to run it more often. I want to run it like once every blue moon when there's a special occasion. This show was supposed to be the 4th of July show, but turns out everybody's busy during special occasions. So, yeah, I think we can expect this to happen more often. I schedule events in the weekend after the special event, and the July show is the 14th right now, I believe. Yeah, because yesterday was Friday the 13th. Did you have any lucky breaks on Friday the 13th, Deft Funk?
I think you mean unlucky breaks.
Yeah.
I did have something very unlucky happen to me.
Ah.
But I can't remember if it was on Friday or not. I have trouble committing things to memory sometimes. Whatever. I had to move everything out of my apartment at once because the managers decided they wanted to put in new flooring all suddenly. I'm just like, it was annoying.
They could have announced. You'd expect that to be announced.
And they did, but they only did so one day before, and that just happened to be a day I didn't check my email.
It's always a combination of a whole lot of things. Yeah. I hope you don't have cast iron furniture in the 4th floor of an apartment building.
Cast iron.
Yeah, because that would be difficult to move to boot.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, well, I only had to move it outside, but not downstairs. So, fortunately for me.
Yeah, that saves a whole bunch of trouble. I remember my brother lives at the 4th floor of an apartment building, and I had to carry out an old cast iron furnace thingy. It's not a furnace; it's a stove, and it was quite heavy. I am the guy people talk to when they need to move, because I like moving, especially when they can't see me and I'm carrying something heavy or fragile. No, turn it around the corner. No, turn it like I'm turning. No, it's slipping away. It fell. They come running towards me and looking panicky and no, I'm fine. This is the reason you called me. I'm allowed to have my fun. So yeah, for today, I have 2 stories lined up, or we have 2 stories lined up. Derpy Explodes at the end of this story by Brony5. I hope I'm pronouncing that all right. It's double F, so Brony5. And The Greatest Day of Her Life, Misadventures of Derpy Hooves by Manulus. We have read the latter story before. We haven't read the prior one. I have marked them all with my nice little marking tool for the lines. We are still waiting for one other person to join us. She said she would join us today, so hopefully that will be a thing. So yeah, about the reboot. I am completely redeveloping the website since the old one kinda died on me. We had a power outage, and the computer that runs the website is a small little computer in the back of my windowsill, and it did not take it well, so it just went up and died. All of the stuff that we produced is still on there. It just has a bad sector error, and you can get this fixed, but it's quite costly and uncertain if it can get fixed. It might get fixed by just waiting around and see if it fixes itself. So just holding on to that. In the meantime, I've had a lot of fun rebuilding the website, and now it's time to rebuild the group. So we have new people attending, mostly as guests thus far, and we'll see who's going to stick around, if at all. The website will have a whole bunch of new things, like you can like and comment on things soon-ish. You can comment, but you can't like or rate anything yet. Automatic portfolios is still a thing for anyone who wants to join, so you'll have your own page, and credits will be listed automatically. You can post your own stories or articles. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that. It's got a new look, which I'm pretty happy with. It's powered by Bootstrap, which I've been looking into, and it's nice because you can make your website easily shift between different sizes of screens, so desktop or laptop or iPad or tablet or smartphones. I haven't built that in yet because I work on a desktop. But as soon as all of the inner workings are done, the outer workings will be worked on. It's a completely new critter, as it were. So yeah, I hope that's going to turn out well. Oh, one of the better things on the website is that users can add their own questionnaires. So if we have once we get a steady cast going, they can add their own questionnaires to their profiles and ask any number of questions about their performance, and then the top 5 questions, which they can rank themselves, will be listed on their profile page, and you as a listener can provide them with, constructive criticism on those questions they want to ask. So instead of a like or a dislike on a video, which doesn't tell the person who wants to improve themselves very much, you can just say, oh, hey, here's someone with a question on how was my Rainbow Dash voice, for example. How did I portray this character instead of, just getting the voice right? Because there's a lot of... I've read quite a bit of, other people's media, and when they're looking for VAs, that the performance always is always paramount to the likeness to the voice. So if someone has a very good Pinkie Pie voice, but they can only do a very happy and bright Pinkie Pie voice, then the characterization will fall flat, and so it will be something to work on. And that's exactly what people can ask on the new website. So yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out. As for the show format, that's not going to change too much. We'll start off with 15 minutes until the first story, so people can just hop on still, or maybe prepare themselves in any way. They may have overlooked something on their part, and then they have 15 minutes to set that right. Then after those first 15 minutes, we'll start with a short story, just for fun. We can react, we can just say anything we like and comment during the story, although we do want to read it proper as well. And then after that, until the next 15-minute mark, we'll have a break, and after that it's going to be a longer story. And that's most of what the show is going to be. So it used to be 3 hours long, and then multiple stories, and, looking it up in the moment, it was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of work, and did get quite hectic. So that's inside the shows, and outside the shows, as I've mentioned before, it's only the most important dates. So we have the 4th of July, Then there's the 1st of September, which is important because it's starting a new school year. And then there's Halloween or Nightmare Night. Then there's I think I have a summer wrap up somewhere in that list. I can get the show schedules, but those are the dates. Then there's Thanksgiving. Then there's I think that's the last one in autumn. So then there's going to be Heartswarming Eve and New Year's Eve, which are going to be combined this year because they fall inside the same week. Then it's Hearts and Hooves Day, and then Winter Wrap Up, and then April Fools. So yeah, that's almost a whole year right there. And it's about 12 shows instead of, once a week, which is a lot more. I did manage to find our 700 earlier recordings, so they're not lost, they're just in limbo, and I may or may not post them as soon as I have a new hard drive for the website, because right now it's still dead, but it can host images and texts, so that's enough for now. Why not get another, why not get a service provider? Well, I want to, run my own things. I like running my own things, and I like having that direct control over the things I post and host, especially in the EU where there's this Article 13 thing coming through where it's going to be illegal to link to various copyrighted materials, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to post my own stuff on my own device, and that should be fine, even if it's derivative works. I haven't read into the law, but it's one of those things I don't want to get into, and I don't want to be bothered with. And I'm like, if I can post my own things at my own time, that should be all I need. So yeah, the other VA imitator is not here yet. She is in Japan, so she might still be waking up. I can poke her. Heyo shows in about a minute. And we'll see if she'll join up for the next story. Right now we have Derpy Explodes at the end of this story by Brony5, which features Derpy, Muffin, and a character called... What's he called again? It's an OC. Darn it, I did write down the name. Oh, here, Trick Trot. So yeah, he's an actor in this story. Although it's just a character that Derpy really likes. And then The Greatest Day of Her Life we've read before, and I really wanted to reread this one because it's an adventure story. I like adventure stories because they have something to them that is, it's interesting to read more into the story than there actually is. Like if you don't take it literally, there might be more to it than just this. Yeah. So imitate.
Go on.
Come again?
No, I got nothing. Go on.
Well, I was just hoping to see if Imitator would come online still, but she is not yet here. So I hope this. This first story is going to take a while. Long enough for her to pop on. Derpy explodes at the end of this story. Let's see how many words. Can we get a word count here? It is 2,500 words, so it's about 20 minutes, I think. Let's see if I'm right on that. Okay, so you want to take the voices then? It's Derpy and a Muffin and a Trick Trot.
Yeah,
yes.
I'll handle it.
Okie doke. Derpy explodes at the end of this story by Brony5. Chapter 1, in which muffins happen. Derpy woke up with a start. She'd been having the most curious dream. In it, she'd been a male mare, which wasn't too different from reality, she supposed. and she'd been en route all across Ponyville and Cloudsdale, delivering letters and packages and going back to the post office, only to receive complaints because she'd been given the wrong ponies the wrong mail. You know you're married to the job when you start dreaming about it.
What a weird dream that was,
she said aloud to no pony in particular, a vice she'd had since she was small. She'd gotten out of bed and made the covers, put the pillow back where it belonged, and made her way to the bathroom where she brushed her teeth until they shimmered and combed her hair until it was appropriately messy. She smiled at her reflection adorably, admiring the silly way her lips scrunched up her grey muzzle, and admiring how her eyes pointed in opposite directions.
"We got lots of work to do today,"
she said, this time to her reflection.
"You ready?"
Her reflection nodded enthusiastically.
"Good,"
Derpy said as she trotted out of the bathroom to get some breakfast. But as she left the bathroom, she stepped on something that was too soft and too squishy to be the floor. She glanced down curiously, lifted her hoof, and underneath it, like buried treasure under a rock, was the most beautiful muffin she had ever seen, baked until the dough had turned gold, with chocolate chips as dark as coffee. Then the muffin looked at her.
"Eat me,"
it said innocently.
"Okay,"
Derpy said with a shrug. She bent her head down and gobbled up the whole thing in a single adorable chomp. As she chewed it up, she saw yet another muffin and ate that one too. And then another, and another, and another. The muffins formed a trail that led to her living room, when Derpy saw the largest and most gorgeous muffin she had ever seen in her life. It sat resplendently in the middle of the living room, glittering as if it were a precious jewel baked in sunlight, producing a delightful smell that welcomed Derpy into the living room. Its body was golden and fluffy. It was so gigantic that it dwarfed all the furniture in Derpy's house. Each chocolate chip was easily the size of Derpy's head, and their delicious, deep brown color whispered beautifully fairy tales to her taste buds. Derpy's mind came back when she heard some dripping sound, like a faucet not fully turned off. She looked down and realized she had been drooling all over her leg and the floor. She wiped her face and then walked piously to the giant muffin. The smile spread across her face and then split open to reveal the teeth that would rend this muffin, which they did. The moment the muffin touched Derpy's tongue, the world melted away, leaving nothing but its amazing, lively flavor painting her mouth with every color of yum. Each hearty chomp took the muffin piece by piece, grinding it to a cakey pulp, and finished it with a loud swallow. And every bite was quickly followed by another, and another, and another, and Derpy had chewed a tunnel from the front of the muffin straight through the top, popping out of the muffin like an adorably perplexed mole. She licked the chocolate from her hooves.
"Best muffin ever!"
she cried, throwing her head back at each word. She then decided to get back to devouring this beautiful, beautiful muffin. With some effort, Derpy managed to pull herself out of the hole she had burrowed, squeezing her weight, fidgeting tightly right to left, left to right, until she finally escaped with a pop, shooting into the air with a pump from her wings. The muffin she had eaten had widened her hips considerably. She had been especially generous with her middle. Straightening herself up in midair to prepare for a return dive made Derpy look like a fat grey raindrop with wings and blonde hair. And down she went, returning to the muffin with a loud splat, boring another hole into the giant muffin. Were any pony to come into the room at that moment, they'd hear a sound like a buzz saw, coupled with a growing depression on one side of the muffin. Within a few minutes, Derpy's head popped out of one of the sides of the sagging muffin, cheeks full from its delicious contents, chewing savagely until finally she swallowed. Licking her lips, Derpy decided to finish her gargantuan treat, but first she'd have to pull herself out. One leg shot out of the hole along with her shoulder, and then the other leg followed suit. Derpy planted each hoof on the other side of the new exit, and with all of her might pushed and pushed and pushed until last the muffin yielded her now gigantic body. Her chubby, cherubic face crowned a neck that sagged into an elephantine body, her wings too small to even fancy lifting a Derpy anymore. Perhaps the most difficult part of her escape from the delicious muffin delicious muffin ever was getting her butt out. It was easily larger than she herself had only been moments ago, as she made egress from the muffin. It crumbled further, finally collapsing like a balloon suddenly deflating. With a movement faster than any pony could expect of someone like Derpy's current size, she pounced on what remained of the muffin, chomping, gobbling, devouring, and inhaling every last crumb that remained. She sat down, her bottom shaking the entire living room on impact.
"That was delicious," she said,
sighing with a dumb grin. Derpy stretched and then rested her forelegs on her belly, lazily rubbing one hoof around its surprising tautness. She nickered in contentment, her tail twitching cutely. Suddenly, Derpy was visited by a strange thought. It wasn't unusual. Her mind, after all, was a miasmic playground tenanted with nothing else. But it was an uncomfortable one.
"Wait, how am I going to get to work now?"
And then the thought packed its things and left Derpy's house with a jolly wave, closing the door behind it just to be polite. Wouldn't be the first thought that escaped her. She looked aside at her front door where the thought made its exit. It was now far too small to accommodate a pony of her size. Then again, her house was made of cloud. Maybe she could find a way to widen the door where she could. Never mind. Derpy was already beginning to sink through the floor. No matter if a Pegasus like her could walk in clouds, even they had their weight limit. She began to panic as her body slunk helplessly, slowly, through the clouds, struggling to suspend her. Attempting to roll over onto her front and in order to run, though to where she never gave any mind, proved fruitless, as her bottom had already sunk so far down her hind legs were already tickled by the sky. Derpy flopped forward, and finally, but she was only in her house from the waist up, and sinking faster. Her now tiny wings fluttered helplessly as she tried, to no avail, to crawl out of the hole she was sinking into. More and more she sank, up the curve of her belly, up to her chest, and then to her shoulders, until finally, if any pony walked into the room at that moment, they'd have seen what would have looked like Derpy's decapitated head, and even that disappeared. Instinct began to overtake panic as Derpy dropped from the heavens to the earth, her wings now running on all cylinders, giving it everything they got to keep her aloft. As hard as her wings flapped, and as much as Derpy concentrated, flight was an unreachable thing. Instead, she merely slowed her descent, going from falling grey meteor to slowly descending in an invisible elevator. With a great effort, Derpy's fall had transgressed into a gentle landing, her body settling between two trees with a soft sound. She tucked her wings, tired and sore, to her sides and blew a sigh of relief. She looked around, taking in the peaceful surroundings and the fresh air.
"Well,"
she said,
"looks like I'm going to need a new house, preferably one that doesn't spit me out."
Just as she started her waddle trek to nearby Ponyville, Derpy saw a figure walking down the nearby road. When he came close enough that Derpy could make him out, her jaw dropped. Those masculine chops, those broad shoulders, that barreled chest, that hot stride, that beautiful hair the color of chocolate chips, those eyes sparkling like silver coins. It was none other than Trick Trot, an actor she'd crushed on since he was a teen filly, and he was coming right this way. The closer he got, the more red Derpy's face became. When he looked at her, he flashed her that very same brilliant grin that made her teeny bopper squeal. It even had that shiny ding she liked so much. Then he walked up to her.
Hello,
he said.
Hi.
Derpy stammered. Trick's silver eyes scanned her, top to bottom. It even took him a while. Derpy blushed more deeply as his smile broadened.
I have to say,
he said,
you must be the most beautiful Pegasus I've ever seen. Trick Trot!
Derpy squealed at last, flailing her forelegs.
Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh! I've seen all your movies 14 times each! At least I especially love One Cat Too Many, even though all the critics hated it. And you didn't deserve to be hated so much because you were the only actor in that whole movie who knew who was doing it. Trick Trot! Oh my gosh, it's you!
There was a surprised pause on Trick's end before he finally lit up with his brilliant smile.
I'm happy you said that,
he said. His horn glowed from his shirt pocket came a small black box. It opened up, revealing a gold ring that twinkled in the morning sunlight.
In fact,
he continued,
I'd be flattered if you became my wife.
Derpy's heart melted, and then it did backflips into the oceans as it bulges blue and angels sparked part of the skies. She couldn't even articulate the word.
Yes!
Instead, slobbering a long string of overjoyed blubbering, she reached out a hoof as Trick took the ring and tried to fit it on, when it became apparent that the ring was, in fact, a ring and not a bracelet. Trick instead shoved the ring up Derpy's nostril.
This is the happiest day of my life,
Derpy whispered as the ring touched her brain. She felt something small poke at her still colossal behind. She turned her head to see a small yellow wrinkly earth pony whose eyes were obscured by the very thick glasses he wore.
Are you Miss Ditsy Doo?
he asked slowly, his voice like air escaping a balloon.
Yeah?
she said. Then suddenly she shook her head as her new fiancé wrapped his forelegs around her, sinking into her soft belly.
Well, actually, no,
she corrected.
I'm Mrs. Ditsy Trot now, but you can call me Derpy. Every pony does.
The Coke-bottled pony slowly arched an eyebrow.
Oh, okay,
he said at last.
I'm here to inform you that you have inherited your long-lost uncle's massive fortune.
Derpy gasped in excitement.
And won the lottery.
Derpy gasped even harder.
And found a long-lost artifact that, while obviously evil in origin, is worth trillions.
If Derpy had gasped any harder, she would have turned herself inside out.
I have an uncle?
she cried. Before the pony could explain any further, he turned into money, and even more money, and the whole area around them turned into piles of gold coins and jewels and other riches glinting in the sunlight. Derpy danced in excitement.
Awesome,
she said.
Now I can buy all the muffins I want.
Almost right at her words, the gold and the jewels, one by one, began turning into muffins, some with chocolate chips, some with blueberries, some with cranberries, but all with delicious cakey goodness. Derpy shoved Trick Trot aside, her fiancé now the first thing from her mind, as she prepared for a dive, dunking low on all fours, wiggling and jiggling her hindquarters in preparation for a pounce. She leapt into the air, higher than should have been possible, and then fell deep into the ocean of sweet, sweet muffins. She swam through it, opening her mouth wide to catch some of the muffins, chewing them, swallowing them. She dove down, disappearing into the muffiny surface, and then burst out, chirping like a dolphin before going back under. It may have taken hours, or days, or weeks, or even, maybe, whole minutes, but the end result was the same. The ocean of muffins soon became a lake, which soon became a pond, which soon became a puddle, until finally there was but one muffin, and a whale of a pony ready to eat it.
You ready to join your little muffiny friends?
Derpy asked, somewhat menacingly. Before the muffin could reply, it was eaten. Its next of kin was informed of this days after, and wept bitterly, swearing revenge on all ponies donning a bat costume, terrifying the populace of muffin-eating ponies. Bat Muffin was born. But he's not important to this story. Derpy chewed the last muffin somewhat thoughtfully, its flavor rich and sticky. She wondered briefly what it would be like to be a muffin, and yet another strange thought in her head full of them. But that thought went away swiftly, and she swallowed. The moment the muffin hit her stomach, a queer feeling clutched Derpy and shook her. Her whole body quivered with a feeling that wasn't quite delight or contentment, instead feeling a little more like a fuse slowly burning short.
Uh-oh,
Derpy muttered, as her already enormous body began to expand even further. That uncomfortable feeling grew even with the rest of her, and now going from a slight burning sensation to an intense burning sensation.
Muffins!
She cried in alarm.
Why hast thou forsaken me?
That burning sensation finally overtook her senses as her body reached critical mass and shivered, just before she woke up. Derpy's eyes snapped open. The ceiling to her bedroom was both up above her and to her left. Normal. She was in her bed, also normal. She pulled herself out of bed, looking at herself over hurriedly, relieved to see that she was in one piece and thin. She breathed a sigh of relief.
What a weird dream,
she said to no pony in particular. Maybe she was talking to her house, I don't know. As she made her bed, Derpy noticed something odd. Her pillow was missing. She looked around the bed. Not there. She looked under the bed. Not there either. She looked all around her bedroom, but it wasn't anywhere. She checked each room of the house, under the tables, inside the lamps, inside the shelves, and under the car she was always driving around on Tuesdays because poppin' wheelies be bitchin'. It wasn't in the house at all. Derpy scratched her blonde mane, scrunching her face, and thought.
But if it isn't here,
she asked herself,
then where?
She hiccuped before she could finish her sentence, suddenly spitting out a small pillow feather that was fluttering before her very eyes.
Oh,
she said, in astonishment. And then she exploded. The end. Guess how long that took?
How long did that take? I'm guessing like 15 to 20 minutes.
Exactly 20 minutes. Well, 19
Wow,
and somewhat. I totally called it.
Way to go, bro. It was like psychic or something.
Well, it used to be the case that I could guess it right from the get-go. Like I would look up stories by word count, and I could tell how long it would take just from the word count. Well, looks like the other VA is awake. I hope she's ready to pop on. She's not online, but she did message me. So, I don't know if Discord allows you to... Oh, there we go. Let's see. A private call. I'll add you. I say I'll add her, but I have no idea how to add people to a private call. I think I think I've got it.
I think we have to make a group and then call.
No, it says you can add more people to this call, and then you can create group DM. so I guess that's a thing. Let's see if I can actually work this. There we go. If she wants to be invited, I'll invite her. Add people. Now I can't find her. Imitate. There we go. Imitator. There we go. Suspense. Daft Punk, are you still there? Hello?
I am indeed.
Yay! Ring ring. Hello? Ring ring. Hello? That's a Charlie the Unicorn reference.
I mean,
It's so old.
years I've seen Charlie, so that flew by me.
You haven't seen it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've seen like one or two of those shorts. I've seen many parodies.
I have been subscribed to Film Cow for so long, and it's still a funny channel.
Yeah.
Every month he has a month of blank, and it's just a new month every time. And I think we had month of leaves recently. Like, enjoy leaves, and he'll just do his weird thing, and it always ends in a weird ghost story. Like all his Patreon callouts and in ghost stories. Hello, imitator. Welcome to the world of the waking. I take it you just woke up. Yeah, I guess correctly. How are you? How have you been?
I'm eating food, I have a headache, I am lightheaded, I'm really thirsty, I'm super hot, I have the cramps, I'm not really feeling well, so let's do this!
Well, at least you'll get to play a character who feels the complete opposite, at least for a little while. I hope that helps.
Opportunity.
This is the derpy one, right?
Yeah. It's
Okay,
also
cool.
it's also quite I say quite lengthy. I should just do a word count on that.
22,000, isn't it?
How long? No.
Well,
Word count.
You said it was like gonna be an hour.
Yeah, approximately. We just did a 2,500 word story that was 20 minutes, and this one is 12,000. So it's gonna be.
Why are you making me do big ones for my first one? Oh no!
who likes big ones? Likes big ones on his channel. Take that however you will.
Well, it's
Well-
usually a short story and then a longer story. So you just tuned in for the longer story.
Yeah, we
Well,
did a shorter one when you weren't here.
Well, that's not fair. But I will say that there's going to be a couple times where someone might knock on my door and try to talk to me. So when those things happen and I don't respond, that's the reason why.
Okay. Let's see here.
Because I was not prepared for this.
There. Oh, hey. What do we have here? Oh, wow. Okay. Oh no, I did mark it. Oh, thankfully.
Oh no, she wasn't prepared for this. I'm just joking. Move on.
There's a couple of paragraphs that are a bit longer, where Derpy does not have any lines. So I hope that the interruptions will happen then, which would be fine.
Okay. All right.
Let's see here. Would you like a marked story?
You already gave it to me.
The greatest day of her life. Have I sent that to you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
You
Yay.
have.
Okay. Oh yeah, I marked that last week. I just marked the shorter story this week, so that was just earlier. Imitator, would you like to introduce yourself on our channel, so listeners know who you are and where they can find you?
Right now? Wait.
Yeah. Since you just
sorry.
hopped on.
Yeah, I don't know who you are, imitator. Where could I find you? Who are you?
I'm a human.
Wow, really? That's amazing. Do go on.
What is this human you speak of? I have read many stories of humans in Equestria, but not of humans on this show. Just kidding. We're all humans in disguise.
Oh. I am a My Little Pony voice actor. I can do 19 My Little Pony voices, but I also do voices for other shows as well. Like I've done a few for Steven Universe, Pokemon, and a few others as well. I'm also a singer, digital artist, traditional artist. I do wall memorials. I do furry costumes and Bernie costumes, and much, much more. So that's who I am.
So
Okay.
prolific.
That is very prolific. Oh, question before I forget. What do you voice like the actual Pokemon and just say their names repeatedly? Because that's always the picture I imagine when I imagine people voicing Pokemon, like in the actual Pokemon show on TV. I just imagine a studio full of people saying the Pokemon voices, Pokemon names over and over again.
Probably, yeah.
What? Well, that doesn't mean you can't put, some
I know.
emotion behind it.
But I mean, I voice for the fandom, so I don't. I mean, I know a lot of voice acting stuff, but I don't specifically know the production of Pokemon.
No, but that's just the picture that always pops up in my mind. It's like you have a studio full. Like there's an episode where Ash leaves Pikachu with a whole bunch of other wild Pikachus and saying, "Oh, this is where you truly belong," and look how happy you are. And then I just imagine there's each Pikachu has a different VA, and you have like 25 VAs saying Pikachu in and out of turn. And someone having to direct that.
I'll be Detective Pikachu. Pikachu.
You can be a Raichu.
Raichu's kind of high pitched too. It's all right. I'd prefer to be Lieutenant Surge. The whole Raichu, use Thunderbolt.
Oh yeah, Lieutenant Surge.
Pikachu.
Maybe I'm being too esoteric.
Esoteric. Okay, so let's see here. The break is almost over. We've got 2 minutes left until the greatest day of her life. I like this story for various reasons, which I will remember while I'm reading the story. So I'll get back to that afterwards. What kind of stories do you guys like most of all? Like category or genre of, or what kind of characters would you prefer in a story?
I lean towards comedy stories personally, and also gravitate towards ones that involve the main six.
Ah.
I don't read.
Well, you're gonna be doing some reading on this show.
I'm sorry. That was just so surprising as an answer.
I just don't.
To be honest, the only time I read is like on the show, and when I pre-read for the show. When I reread my stories or friend stories when they want to have them proofread, and all other stuff I read is non-fiction because I'm a programmer and you look up everything you need to know on Google and DuckDuckGo and all these JavaScript forums and all that. So most of the stuff I read is non-fiction, but when I do read fiction, it is pony. Generally.
You don't always read fiction, but when you do, it's My Little Pony fiction.
I only read scripts.
Oh, those are good things to read.
Yes.
Hey, Imitator, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes.
You should link it.
I will drop it in the. I will even drop it in the description.
Drop that stuff like it.
It's not good at all.
Wait, what's not good at all? Dropping the link or having your YouTube channel be public?
Drop it like it's hot.
I only have 12 videos and like 265 subs.
12.
I usually
Only
voice
200
act.
subs. Usually voice act what?
No, I mean, and, I don't go on really anything else except for DeviantArt because I'm also an artist. But I don't I voice act for other people's channels, like Magpie Pony, Yasho. I'm voice acting in Doors 3 and stuff, so.
Doors what? Wait, repeat that?
Doors 3? The project?
Doors 3. No, I haven't heard that one. Might have to look that up.
I'm gonna copy this link and put it in the description. And then we will get to the story, because we are overdue by 1 minute, which is fine for such a long story. Okay. Are you ready?
Why not?
Sure.
Then let's go. The Greatest Day of Her Life by Manulus. Chapter 1. Dragons and Parasprites and jaw references. Oh my. Derbyhoof stood frozen in abject terror just outside the small, dingy office of her boorish foreman, Boxy Brown. She had been late again, and Boxy had given her a once-over as usual. It was a routine by now.
One more day like this and you're gone! You get me? I don't know why I keep thinking you'll shape up and quit wasting my time. Guess I'm just in a good mood today, or I'd give you a pink slip right here.
Derby had heard some variations of this speech at least 100 times by now, and she knew what came next. Boxy was going to give her a job to do, an awful one, most likely.
Just fly east over the Everfree Forest until you see a mountain with a house on top of it. There's a crotchety old unicorn that lives there by the name of Wither's Deathray. This package is for him.
What?
Derby stuttered.
I don't want to meet any pony who has Deathray actually in his name.
Boxy snorted with a laugh.
Well, if I had my way,
He said.
I wouldn't have ever met any pony with Derpy in hers.
He reached down behind his desk with his head and lifted a small brown box up with his teeth.
Now here.
He grunted, his large yellow teeth filled with the package. Derby furtively craned her head forward towards the parcel, but the vile aroma of Boxy's breath caused her to recoil away.
What?
Boxy lifted his right eyebrow in a mixture of annoyance and confusion as Derby turned quickly to the side and opened up her delivery bag.
Just drop it in.
Derby cringed at the sound of the contaminated box flopping into the bottom of her saddlebag.
Well, I'll be on my way.
As she made for the door, Boxy cleared his throat loudly.
Did I say you could leave?
You said to deliver the pack.
Don't you tell me what I said.
Boxy trotted up quickly, placed his own face into her own.
You've got the worst delivery record of any pony here, and frankly, I'm tired of seeing all the complaints coming in off your route. If I had any pony, and I mean any pony else to trust with this package, I would. But every pony else was gone when it came in, and do you know why that is?
Derby shook her head,
No.
despite knowing the answer. Like most of Boxy's rhetoric, she'd heard it before.
Because
Said Boxy.
they get to work on time.
I have to walk Dinky to school every morning.
Derby protested.
I told you that when you hired me.
Boxy scowled.
You could fly her to school and shave a few minutes.
He said.
I tried that. If I fly fast, she gets airsick. And if I fly slow, there's no difference.
Derby's tone was pleading, and for a moment, Boxy's expression softened.
Why are we even having this discussion again?
He asked.
Your little ground pounder isn't my problem. My problem is that package. It's supposed to be a rush delivery. Since you're all I've got, and there's no way I'm leaving you to watch the office, I'm giving you this one. Simple little job to do today, and you don't as much as have to set a hoof in the Everfree. Just stay above it the whole way there and back, and you'll be fine. All you have to do is fly straight east out of town about 2 hours. Get Deathray's signature and give him the package, then fly right back here. And look at me when I'm talking to you.
I am looking at you. You're looking at the wrong eye.
Derby yelped.
Whatever.
Boxy huffed.
Do this right, and I'll let you go home early. And I may even forget about your lousy record for a day or two. Screw this up, and you'll be looking for some pony else dumb enough to hire a pony whose special talent is being an idiot. Now go!
Yes, sir.
Derpy's wings were beating before she even reached the exit. She took the knob in her teeth and flung open the door and dove through. Crash! Broom closet,
Would you get out of my office?
shouted Boxy.
I'm going.
Came Derpy's hurried reply. Smash! A window.
That's coming out of your paycheck!
Derpy didn't care. She could barely hear Boxy's wailing voice as she flew like a madmare for the Everfree Forest.
Oh, this is bad.
Derpy thought. She was over the forest by now, and Ponyville was beginning to fade out of sight. The only sounds in the sky were of the shifting winds and the flapping of Derpy's own wings.
Foxy gets upset pretty easily, but he seems serious this time. If I lose my job, I won't be able to take care of Dinky. Ponyville Social Services might take her away from me.
Flapping.
Wait, I'm worrying too much about this. It's just a simple delivery. So what if it's for some old, Karma Gian with a scary name?
Louder flapping.
Who happens to live in the middle of what might actually be the worst place in the world? All I've got to do is fly straight east. It's still morning, so that's straight into the sun.
Thunderous flapping.
I think.
Ear-shattering flapping.
Where's gonna happen? And why are my wings so loud?
Derpy glanced back over her shoulder to determine the source of the noise. It was a dragon with its mouth wide open.
Sweet Holy Celestia!
Shrieked the Pegasus. Derpy snap-rolled starboard, and a pair of cavernous green jaws slammed shut on thin air with an ear-splitting thunk. The gust of their impact filled her wings and pushed her even further away from the scaly beast. It was only by sheer fortune that the added boost pushed her beyond the reach of the gargantuan green claw that swept past her face as she swung wide to starboard. She turned furiously at the air as the dragon banked to pursue her.
Well, if he wanted to roast me with his breath, he could have already done that. He must prefer his ponies raw. That's a relief.
For a moment's further imagining led Derpy to determine that this was, in point of fact, no relief at all.
What am I thinking?
She yelped. The dragon banked towards her and brought itself across Derpy's hindquarters. As it passed, it took another snap, coming even closer than before. Sweeping past, it propelled itself forward with a sudden, hard rearward thrust of its wings. It rolled over, angling its tail outwards of its center of rotation in an effort to bat Derpy down. The terrible instrument swept so close behind the little Pegasus that she was certain she felt its brush her tail. This assault failing, the dragon opened its wings and began to gain altitude. 3 beats of its emerald wings had lifted it well above her in the sky.
What's he doing? Think, Derps. Think back to flight school.
An image entered Derpy's mind of her old flight instructor, Hot Wings McPhee. He had been a fat, red Pegasus with grey receding mane and a fried chicken wing for a cutie mark. He'd always smelled like crayons and toothpaste.
The things you remember from school,
thought Derpy. The dragon was still gaining altitude.
Oh, what did he say to do?
Now, children,
Hot Wings said.
there's a small but very real chance that at some point in your life, something or some pony may attempt to physically harm you while you're in flight. Their most likely course of action will be to attempt to gain altitude, so that they can use the additional acceleration provided by a dive to gain the necessary velocity to overtake you. You should do everything you can to avoid allowing them to gain a superior position.
Well, too late for that. Come on, Derps, there has to be something else.
If, for whatever reason, you cannot prevent the assailant from gaining altitude more quickly than you, then your only option is to die. At this point, you're essentially playing chicken, and that's where I come in.
He gestured at his cutie mark.
I'm the master of chicken,
He had said.
Never been beaten at it once. That's because I know when to pull up. I know right when I'd be too fast. When my wings would snap from the strain if I waited a moment longer. Most ponies don't know that. Most learn in the worst possible way. But me, I'm the master. And I'm gonna teach you how to win at chicken every single time.
What had followed was a month-long course that had brought her inches closer to the ground every day. She had thought that the old Pegasus was insane. There couldn't be possibly any good reason for a pony would need to know how to execute such a maneuver. It was useless, like algebra, until today,
Okay, old stallion.
thought Derpy.
Let's see if you really were the master.
Derpy looked down at the green expanse beneath her, then upwards at the green terror above her.
I hate my job.
She grunted under her breath. Shutting her eyes for a moment, she closed her wings and let gravity do the work, angling herself into an all-out nosedive. Seeing her maneuver, the dragon realized its hand had been forced, and did likewise. Derpy checked its pursuit with a quick glance back, and felt her heart sink as she realized that she was now caught in a game of chicken with a hungry creature hundreds of times her size.
I love you, Dinky.
She thought of her daughter. Derpy's eyes corrected their bizarre misalignment, a rare occurrence of which Derpy herself was never fully aware. She clenched her wings and legs to her sides, and gritted her teeth. She had never had great depth perception, but was certain she had lost about half her altitude by now. What was worse, it had been maybe 10 or 12 seconds since she'd sensed herself reaching terminal velocity.
I'll be done in 10 seconds.
She thought.
Maybe 12?
She looked back once more, and her heart leapt. The dragon had opened its wings and was furiously trying to pull out of its dive. From its thrashing wings, the expression on its face, it didn't seem that Derpy would be able to make it.
Whatever.
She thought.
Why?
Derpy opened her wings slowly. Whether or not she was the smallest pony, she was still a good flyer, if nothing else. And Hot Wings had taught her well. She knew she had to resist the urge to fling her wings wide open all at once. At this speed, the sudden wind resistance would sprain or even break them, and all her skill and all of Hot Wings' careful instruction would be useless then. She'd be a goner for certain. As she continued to open her wings slowly, and slowly pulled up, the dragon plummeted past her, leaving in its wake a massive wave of turbulence, which ruffled her mane, fur, and feathers. She had heard the roar, saw the great green claw that swept past her in a furious attempt to bring her down with it, but she had no time to even consider either one. As her wings reached full expansion, she finally brought her body level, but her inertia caused her to continue dropping nonetheless. She flew forward, losing altitude more and more slowly, but still too quickly for comfort. The trees were very close now, close enough that she could see individual branches. Somewhere behind her was a loud but dull thud, the dragon's impact. Only a second later, the trees were all around her. The forest floor reached up so close that she was certain she felt it brush up against her chin and belly. She thought those sensations must certainly be her last, that she had struck the earth, that here her life was ended. But instinct and training drove her upwards on the chaotic pumping of her wings. Now, with no time to consider a remarkable fact in her own continued existence, Derpy rolled and banked through the green, twisted tangle of the ever-free canopy, her altitude at least stable.
Maybe next year I'll do this for the best young flyer competition.
She thought, as she desperately searched for the next pony-sized hole in the thick green-brown wall that seemed to never end. She was beating her wings in a retrograde now, trying her best to extinguish what may have remained of her momentum.
At least I'm not going so fast an impact would actually kill me anymore.
Snap! Spoke the forest in reply to the Pegasus' hubris. Derpy's hoof had clipped a branch of the thickness of a pencil. At normal speeds it would hardly have been noticeable, but with this kind of propulsion behind her, it sent her tumbling head over tail. The ground grabbed the Pegasus by her bottom, and suddenly she was rolling. There came a steady beating at her body from every direction, thuds and thumps on every side of her, at such a rate that their sources were indeterminate and seemingly everywhere. Derby wasn't quite sure how far she had rolled when she finally came to rest, but there at last she was, upside down, resting against the boulder, and cross-eyed as ever. She looked left, looked right, and then gently wiggled each wing and leg. Nothing was broken.
I'm alive?
She asked, her voice thick with amazement.
I'm alive!
She shouted happily. Derby leaped to her hooves and hopped up and down like a lunatic.
I'm alive! I'm alive! I'm alive!
2 minutes ago, this had been a routine delivery. For most ponies, this would have been a time for reflection on the fragility of life. But for Derby Hose?
Time for a muffin.
Derby climbed on top of the boulder she had come to rest against, flitting her wings to give herself an extra boost. When she was on top of it, she sat down on her haunches, grabbed hold of her saddlebags by her teeth, and then pulled them forward, over her head. Before she could fully remove them, however, her left wing got caught under the belt. Several tugs and one very near tumble later, she paused.
Wait a second.
Derby wriggled about until one saddlebag slid back down onto their original position about her midriff, then pressed them downwards off her body with her forehooves.
There we go, muffin time!
Derby opened the saddlebag that usually rode on her left side. The right bag was occupied by the package and her clipboard. This one served a very special purpose in the life of this grey Pegasus. It was stocked with a variety of muffins, which were her favorite food, which something of a mild, long-time obsession. Derby had one of every muffin Sugar Cube Corner made, and several she had baked at home. There was cinnamon, chocolate chip, and various apple muffins. There was strawberry, blueberry, blackberry, raspberry, and cranberry, one of each one, and without white or dark chocolate. There was carrot muffin, and there was a bran muffin. There was a corn muffin, a hay muffin. There were various muffins flavored in 4 different varieties of citrus fruit. There were muffins with nuts, peanuts, walnuts, almonds, cashews, and there was a banana muffin. There was a Neapolitan muffin. There was a peanut butter muffin. There was a muffin.
Pinkie Pie sure does know how to pack a muffin bag. Now which one for a snack?
For Derby, choosing Muffy was just shy of impossible. She had long ago given up trying to pick just one during her morning stop at Sugar Cube Corner. It was an errand of utter futility which tended to make Dinky late for school, and Derby even later for work. Pinkie Pie had learned to expect her, and now she simply stuffed the bag full, wordlessly but for a cheerful hello, and Mr. and Mrs. Cake were even kind enough to give Derby a discount for being such a consistent customer. It was a good thing, too. Not even Derby's muffin budget could withstand this kind of wretched excess. But her stomach could.
Strawberry cheesecake and vanilla glaze? Looks like we have a winner!
Derby gently bit down on the muffin and removed it from its place in the bag. Then she bit off a generous hunk of its warm, soft top. She balanced the remainder of the muffin on her hoof as she chewed and swallowed, her face painted with an expression of pure ecstasy. As she finished her first bite of the muffin, she took a moment to observe her surroundings. The boulder which had earlier halted her involuntary somersault, and upon which she now sat, occupied the center of a small clearing. It was a relatively pleasant place for the Everfree Forest, owing mostly to the fact that the sunlight reached the forest floor here, and allowing grass to grow. The trees at the clearing's edge even looked somewhat friendlier than they did everywhere else in the strange woods. They were still gnarled and twisted, but the sun shone down and painted them pretty browns and greens, as opposed to the cold greys and dull olive colors that seemed to dominate the dark undergrowth of the forest.
If I had to hit any rock in the forest, I aimed pretty well.
She took another bite. Derpy swallowed.
What was that noise? Oh, sweet Celestia, no!
There was only one thing in the world that made that sound. Derpy took a deep breath and turned her gaze away from the muffin. Eyes. Eyes in the trees. First there were 2, then 4, then 8, then dozens, each pair affixed to a brightly colored winged bale of unbridled cuteness and hunger. They were parasprites, the most adorable of all the horrors of the earth that had seen fit to suffer, and each and every one of them had its wicked, lovable gaze fixed on Derpy's saddlebags.
They're after my saddlebags, my muffins, the package.
The chirping, all at once heartwarming and terrifying, continued to intensify as much as more and more pairs of eyes as appeared in the midst of the boughs. A swath of orange ripped across the clearing, and the muffin that had been atop Derpy's hoof simply ceased to be. Startled, she hopped to her hooves and let out a squeak of surprise. All the world seemed slow to a crawl. Derpy craned her neck down and took the belt of her saddlebag in her mouth. From a dead start, she knew she could not gain altitude quickly enough to escape. She would have to make a run for it. Her legs and wings tensed as her addled yellow eyes searched the field of iridescent adorability for any opening she might exploit. After some 3 or 4 seconds that seemed to stretch into as many hours, she saw just one path through the thickets and brambles that was not occupied by a parasprite.
There!
She had no other thought. For a moment she did not breathe. The chirping grew quiet. They were preparing to strike. It was Derpy, however, who made the first move. She was a grey and yellow streak of pounding hooves and flapping wings, using everything at her disposal to propel herself forward towards her identified avenue of escape. The parasprites reacted just as suddenly, closing in on her in a buzzing, chirping cloud of ravenous hunger and raving madness. Too late. She was through the swarm and at full gallop, diving her over logs and through vine tangles with a grace that defied her reputation for clumsiness, and yet her every maneuver was matched by the pursuing haze of darling insatiability.
Not my muffins, not the package, not my job, not my dinky.
Never in all her life had Derpy run so fast, not at the running of the leaves, not at the sight from Nightmare Moon herself. She was ludicrous with fear and indignation. She was a lightning bolt, born not of cloud but of earth. She was a mare made of wind and fury. And then the ground went away. Gorge.
Seriously?
Remarkably, she had the presence of mind not to drop the saddlebags, but as she burst from the trees and dropped into the ghastly gorge, Derpy almost forgot that she could fly. Unlike the previous incident with the dragon, there was no need to open her wings slowly, nor was there time. The ancient river which had cut out the gorge was growing larger by the second, and she flung open her wings and leveled out. The heartwarming horde of doom continued to give chase. Derpy dove low and skimmed just above the surface of the water. It gained her a little distance, but it put her in the same unenviable position in which she had found herself earlier. She simply could not gain the altitude quickly enough to escape. She pressed on with all her might, scanning the trees to either side of the canyon wall beyond. Certainly, there had been some way out of this predicament. It was then that she first caught sight of something that she had not noticed before. A shadow looming in the deep. It was right beneath her, tracking her every movement, and it was growing larger. A great grey face crested the surface. It was a giant fish with jagged scales that glistened like blades in the sun. It rolled over on its side, displaying a mouthful of razors that was easily as large as the dragon's had been. And just above the vicious, toothy grin, its right eye met Derpy's own, a horrible eye, black and devoid of emotion or compassion. The sight made Derpy feel as if an icicle had been replaced her spine.
It's like a doll's eye.
The Leviathan slipped under the water, Derpy knew she could not remain at this altitude lest she be snatched from the sky by its cruel teeth. She angled her body upwards and pumped her wings vigorously, but as she did so, parasprites closed the gap, and halfway up the canyon walls they overcame her. She was surrounded. Parasprites swarmed this way and that, 4 of them tugging at the saddlebags, and a dozen more pulling at her wings and mane. Derpy gritted her teeth against the belt, rolled back and twisted amid the greedy chatter of the insectoid scourge. She felt her teeth slipping and kicked her body forward, looping her left foreleg through the belt to gain an extra leverage. Soon the number of parasprites trying to wrench the bag free of her grip made it completely impossible for her to flap her wings. She was suspended in the sky only by their avaricious legs, and both she and the cloud of parasprites were losing altitude, moving downwards towards the thing in the river. Derpy had finally had enough.
Listen, you charming little pukes!
Both an insult, literal and figurative. The chirping halted. The parasprites clinging to her body gnawed at the muffin bag, froze. What seemed like thousands of eyes rolled towards her. There was no sound but for the buzzing of the parasprite's wings.
You want muffins? Here!
Derpy took the flap of the muffin bag in her tooth and ripped it open. A cascade of muffins poured out from the open bag and showered into the river. The parasprites dove immediately to follow it, and it swarmed low over the water's surface. Derpy hovered in exasperation as the whole cloud and the muffins beneath it moved downstream with the river's flow. She heard the vile hacking of an otherwise captivating little creatures regurgitating off their offspring into existence. Sickened by the whole affair, and by the loss of so many delicate muffins, she slowly climbed upwards, 1 flap at a time. And then, with a mighty splash, the great fish exploded from the water's surface, its jaws agape, swallowing both parasprites and muffins in one titanic gulp. The whole event took less than a second before a great wet whoosh marked the fish's return to the depth. Derpy hovered for a moment, staring at the place in the water where the fish had disappeared.
I'm hungry,
she said quietly. She strapped her saddlebags around her waist and made for the clouds. Chapter 2. The House That Insanity Built. The rest of Derpy's flight was largely uneventful, though she had developed a healthy case of paranoia and a more than passing tendency to check behind herself with a rather excessive frequency. Soon a lone mountain loomed into view, its peak half against higher than Derpy's own altitude. It was a strange sight, standing by itself in the middle of the forest. Just above its tree line, it flattened out at its peak. She found a friendly updraft and rode to a height from which she could comfortably descend on her destination. It was quite chilly up there, so high, but she was so elated to be nearing her errand completion that she didn't even notice. Sure enough, as the updraft carried her above the mountain's peak, she looked down to see what must surely be the home of Wither's Death Ray. Situated in the very center of a depression in the mountain's peak, it was a crater, and the mountain was an extinct volcano.
That's strange.
Derpy mumbled to herself.
Foxy said it was a house. That looks more like a mansion or a castle.
It was too small a property to be considered a proper castle, but it did indeed bear many of the features of a fortress. It was stone, with a high wall surrounding an inner courtyard, and a structure at the center of the courtyard that seemed somehow foreboding even from this distance. Strangest of all was its roof was flat, capped by huge mechanical devices that resembled a bowl and a giant unicorn's horn in the middle. It was arced upwards, and pointed straight back towards the direction from which Derpy had come. As she drew closer, she could see that this device was made entirely of iron, and was very old and rusty. Next to it sat what appeared to be a small antique airship. It was against protocol to enter a locked property without the owner's permission, so Derpy sat herself down just outside the tall iron gate. It was just as rusty as the whole thing on the roof, and chained fast with an iron padlock which was almost the size of Derpy's head, that had no visible keyhole.
Hello?
She only half yelled. In truth, she wasn't sure she wanted to hear an answer. When no reply came, she considered going back to Ponyville and telling Boxy that no one had been home. She knew she couldn't, though. That would be the end of her job, for sure. She cleared her throat.
Hello?
Her voice echoed in the ancient crater. No reply but the sound of the wind.
Hello?
This time she screamed. For a few seconds there was no reply. Then the big iron log glowed for a moment and opened, seemingly on its own will. The link of the chain which had been looped around its tang slipped loose. Now the chain and lock began to move, slithering like a rusty old iron snake. It first made its way to the ground, and then looping the end of its chain around the iron bar of the gate, pulled it open to allow Derpy passage. Derpy stood dumbstruck in a mixture of amazement and fear. The chained snake waited, and seemed to watch her with its eyeless padlock head. When she did not move, it choked its chained body up further on the iron bar, and an action that created an awful metallic scraping noise. Once repositioned to its satisfaction, the chained snake used the newly freed end of its tail to gesture for her to come inside. Quivering with reluctance, Derpy obeyed. As she passed through the gate, Derpy observed her bizarre surroundings. The forest below her seemed almost welcoming by comparison. Because this edifice stood above the tree line, there was nothing green in the courtyard. It was paved with cobblestones, and everywhere she looked were strange statues of all manners of animals and ponies. The statues were not made of stone, but of twisted iron, so that they all seemed skeletal, and even death-like. Rust covered every one, and lent a further air of corruption and decay to their appearance. There were statues in the shapes of giant cats, statues in the shapes of birds, statues of wolves, and of course, statues of Pegasi, unicorns, and earth ponies alike.
And that one is looking at me.
It was a statue of a unicorn that just stood right to this path leading to the front door of the mansion. Its head had been turned to a different direction a few moments ago, but at some point, while she hadn't been looking, it had shifted its gaze to focus on Derpy.
No, I'm crazy. It must have been like that all along.
Clang! Derpy almost dropped out of her skin. It was the gate. Its peculiar guardian had shut it, and was coiling itself back around the bars.
I'm locked in!
Derpy nearly fainted.
Wait, wings.
She allowed herself a nervous giggle. Of course, she could just fly over the wall at any time. She turned back towards the house, and had walked to within spitting distance of the unicorn statue before she realized its head was turned to another way again. Derpy stopped in her tracks, and had to restrain herself from taking to the air. She would do this job no matter what. She gave the statue a wide breath as she continued to walk towards the door, her whole body trembling violently.
Just get his signature and give him the package. Then go home. That's all you have to do, Derps. Just get the signature. You've done it 1,000 times before.
Derpy's pep talk didn't calm her tremulous body. What it did do, at least, was fill the awful silence that pervaded the courtyard, and gave her the force of will to keep putting one hoof in front of the other. Before she knew it, she stood at the tall, arched double doors of the foreboding grey manor. Upon the door there was a sculpture of a life-sized unicorn stallion head. Unique among everything she's seen here so far, it was silver, and carefully cast to appear as realistic as possible. An iron door knocker was suspended from its teeth, and she knocked out to take it into her own. After the thing she had seen, she fully expected it to knock on the door all by itself. Her expectation proved accurate, and made it no less startling.
Yeah!
Derpy yelped, as the knocker landed twice against the iron stop pad. Two loud, hollow thuds echoed from beyond the heavy doors. She was more ready than ever to get that signature, rid herself of the package, and go sailing over those walls.
I'm flying flat out back to Ponyville. No stops. No slowing down. I can rest when I get home.
The door groaned, and as it began to swing open, rust broke away from its iron hinges, as if it had not been opened in years. Derpy was sweating profusely, despite the cold. What kind of pony lived in a place like this? What kind of pony had the name Wither's Deathray? What imaginable fiend lay beyond the portal that even now was slowly swinging aside? She turned her eyes upwards, and prepared to come face to face with a black stallion of the apocalypse.
Down here!
Derpy was confused. Where was that voice coming from?
Hey you! Swizzle eyes!
It dawned on her that the voice was coming from the immediately below her field of vision. She looked down, and there, before her, stood a short, shriveled unicorn, wrapped in a red saddle blanket. He was white, but not the beautiful, healthy white Derpy was accustomed to seeing in unicorns. There was a tinge of yellow to his coat, and his mane had almost completely fallen out. Only a few grey sprigs remained to mark that it had ever existed at all, and they were very long and unkempt. He eyed Derpy with an expression of utter contempt, rendered comical by the fact that his enormous glasses made his eyes appear to be half again their normal size. His eyebrows flattened as he spoke.
Whatever you want, make it quick. I'm busy.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Are you Wither's Deathray?
Derpy realized that the silver unicorn's head on the door was the same unicorn to whom she now spoke years and years ago.
Well, who else would I be? Nobody else lives out here. And what's more, who wants to know? I can't believe you come knocking on my door, disturbing my work without even the courtesy to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Derpy Hooves with the Equestrian Parcel Service. You have the package.
Derpy opened her saddlebag and fished out the box with her teeth. She remembered as she turned to face the tiny unicorn that this self-same package had earlier been in Boxy's putrid mouth. Reflexively, she opened her mouth and dropped the box in disgust. Realizing what she had just done, she raised her forelegs and awkwardly caught it before it hit the ground. She very nearly lost her balance and fell forward on top of it, but quickly began flapping her wings to keep the forward half of her body suspended. Looking down, she quickly read the return address on the box.
It's from Carousel Boutique.
Derpy was more confused than usual.
Ah! My diamond!
The little old unicorn's horn glowed, and the box did likewise. Then it wrenched itself free of Derpy's grasp. Gingerly, she set her forehoofs back on the ground, and stopped beating her wings. The box seemed to tear itself open, and from it levitated the biggest diamond Derpy had ever seen.
A diamond? At least that explains the dragon. Any dragon within 10 miles would smell that thing.
It's lovely. And just in time. I'm almost done with the calibrations.
The old unicorn's salty, high-pitched voice rose to a full octave as he spoke. With a speed that belied his shriveled appearance, he turned and ran back into its enormous home, the huge diamond floating right alongside him as he went.
Wait, sir!
Derpy shouted.
I had to get your signature.
She removed her clipboard from the same saddlebag that he had held her package. It was piled deep with forms that needed Deathray's signature. Technically, she was never supposed to enter a home while on duty. Boxy would never know, though, and she was not going back without that signature. So in she went. The place somehow managed to be even creepier inside than out. There were no statues here, but everything from the faded tapestries that lined the walls to the ornate chandelier that hung from the ceiling, to the carpets on the floor, to the large ebony dining table that dominated the chamber, that was coated in dust and cobwebs. The old unicorn obviously hadn't used his room recently, and Derpy doubted he ever had.
Why would he? This place is for entertaining, and I think I'm the first soul he's seen in ages.
Derpy continued to examine the room in an effort to figure out where Deathray could have gone. It was slightly warmer inside, despite the fact that no fire burned in the huge fireplace positioned opposite the door, and somehow that made Derpy aware for the first time of just how cold this place really was. There was a staircase on the left side of the room, and from one of the several hallways atop of it, Derpy caught sight of a dim glow.
The telekinesis on the diamond. That's where he went.
Derpy forewent the stairs altogether and flew upwards. The breeze of her wings kicked up a billowing cloud of dust from the floor, the walls, and even the ceiling. She landed atop the staircase in a coughing fit that caused her to drop the clipboard.
Sir!
Derpy stretched the words into 3 separate syllables. She knew she was whining, and she didn't care. She just wanted to go home. This day had been long enough without this strange little pony making it worse.
Oh.
She picked up the clipboard and cantered down the hallway in pursuit of the diminishing glow. After several twists and turns, she caught up to her quarry just as he was opening a heavy wooden door. Given no other choice, she followed him through. Inside, she discovered there was what was obviously a magical laboratory. There were beakers, shelves of scrolls, and large, strange machines of unguessable purpose scattered all about the premises. Derpy had seen a similar laboratory once before, when searching for a book in the basement of the Ponyville Library.
But it wasn't half this size.
She thought.
No, not even a fourth.
At the center of the room, running all the way to the ceiling, there was a huge cylindrical iron chamber. Unlike all the other iron objects she had seen in this place, it was immaculate, clean and black, a little ways above her head in height, and it tapered down into a smaller diameter and then ended abruptly. A glowing spire extended down from it, and came to a point at eye level. Deathray was waddling towards it. As he went, he removed his saddle blanket via telekinesis and moved it across the room to a coat rack. His cutie mark was now revealed to Derpy. It was a sunburst, coming from a common among unicorns who were exceptionally skilled with magic, and, by that same token, incredibly uncommon in the world at large. But this one was different than the few Derpy had seen before. It was a solid black. Derpy had a bad feeling about this odd little unicorn, but she had to get his signature, whatever the case. Deathray placed the diamond at the end of the strange spire, and it hovered there, rotating slowly. Derpy tucked the clipboard under her wing.
Sir?
Wah!
Deathray jumped half his own diminutive height.
What are you doing in here?
I have to get your signature, please.
Derpy smiled sweetly, trying her best to focus both eyes in unison onto the old pony's face. The attempt only resulted in her head cocking awkwardly to the right.
Oh, fine, fine.
The clipboard glowed faintly and levitated out from under Derpy's wing and towards Deathray. A pen floated from a nearby desktop.
Don't forget to sign every page. We need lots of signatures for an item of that value.
Derpy continued to look around the particular room, noticing her bewilderment even as he flipped through the dozens of pages of the manifest, stopping to sign each one. Deathray smiled for the first time. He had no teeth.
Impressive, isn't it? I spent the better half of a century building this laboratory. Not an easy feat when one has to gather all his resources either by mail order from the Everfree or from the Everfree Forest.
You ordered all of this?
Derpy definitely did not recall ever having delivered anything here before.
Most of it. But that was decades ago. You wouldn't have even been alive.
Deathray continued signing the papers.
Why order everything?
Oh, that whole business with being banished here for the rest of my life. A point at which I still find myself in disagreement with the princess.
Okay.
Said Derpy.
Oh, but that was before your time too, wasn't it? No, I doubt anyone remembers me at all these days.
Still more signing.
If you don't mind me asking, why did Princess Celestia banish you?
Even though she was a little apprehensive about the strange little pony, Derpy's curiosity was piqued. For the first time, her thoughts were on something other than getting out of this place.
Well, for most of my youth, I was just another magic research specialist. I had a secret project, though. Most of us did back then, but mine was special. While every pony else was creating things to do mundane things like make earth ponies fly or allow animals to talk, I was designing the most powerful weapon in the history of the world!
It was about halfway through the stack of papers by this point. Derpy gulped, forcing a lump that felt like a crab apple down her throat.
What sort of weapon?
Well, a death ray, of course.
Of course.
Said Derpy.
The name and all.
Yes. If I was going to design a life ray, my name wouldn't make as much sense my name wouldn't make much sense at all now, would it?
He chortled as he flipped to another page.
I suppose not.
Derpy did not like where this was going. At all.
Just imagine this, Miss Hooves, did you say? How quaint. At any rate, imagine this. Most of the great magical weapons of antiquity were too destructive to ever be used. They would level entire countries, reduce mountains to craters, and otherwise cause destruction on a scale that defied imagination. I have read in some of my older tomes that Discord was quite fond of them, and even had something to do with their design. To ponies, though, they were of little use. What value is there in a conquest if the lands of the conquered are uninhabitable?
Why would you...
Deathray stepped on Derpy's words and continued speaking.
My death ray completely sidesteps this little caveat. It simply, well, it causes death. It snuffs out life forces in every inhabitant in an entire city, leaving all of their wealth and the resources of the surrounding area intact. That's the prototype on the roof.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Derpy forced a smile as her heart dropped into her empty, growling stomach.
Isn't it, though?
He seemed entirely too pleased with himself.
And the diamond?
Derpy barely managed to whimper out the question.
I need a large diamond of absolute perfection to serve as a conduit for magical refraction of the ray. Otherwise, its range will be limited to only its immediate surroundings. With a diamond like this, however, I can curve the ray's trajectory so that it can strike anywhere in the entire world. It took all this time for a pony with the skills to cut such a gem to come along, and I've had to order out with every boutique and jewelry store in Equestria for at least 30 years. Who'd have thought some pony from humble little Ponyville would be the one to bring an end to my wait? I had feared I'd have passed beyond the veil without seeing my labor come to fruition. But now, at long last, my magnum opus will be perfected.
He was nearing the bottom of the stack of papers.
And let me guess, you're going to get your revenge on Princess Celestia by testing it on Counterlot?
She held her breath.
Of course not.
The squat unicorn peered from around the side of the clipboard and shook his head at Derpy in disapproval.
Princess Celestia would not be immune to the effect of a ray this powerful. She would die, and the sun would be locked in place forever. One side of the planet would be scorched bare, and the other would freeze solid. The world would end. How dreadful. Do you think I'm mad?
As Deathray returned to signing papers, Derpy released a pent-up pair of air from her release the pent-up air from her lungs. Everything would be alright after all. When she got home, she would tell Twilight Sparkle what she'd learned, and one quick letter to the princess would see this horrible machine permanently dismantled. Deathray signed the last piece of paper, and then tapped a pen against the clipboard, signaling the completion of the task.
No, I'd never test it on Canterlot,
he said.
I'm gonna test it on Ponyville instead. Now take your clipboard and be on your way.
Derpy said not one word as she walked over, calmly took the clipboard out of the air, tucked it into her saddlebag, and closed the flap. And then she smiled at Wither's Deathray with every ounce of charm she could muster.
Have a wonderful day,
she said. Then she grabbed the diamond in her teeth and ran like all the horrors of Tartarus were nipping at her tail. Smash! A window. Chapter 3. A Bad Decision.
Stop her!
Deathray screamed. As Derpy flew over the courtyard, every statue she had seen earlier came to life all at once. The enormous cat statues leaped at her, slashing with claws like knives. The Pegasus and bird statues took flight to pursue her. The earth pony statues ran beneath her, and the unicorn statues fired red balls of light which exploded in pale purple fire and lightning all around her. Miraculously, she was able to dodge the magical onslaught. As she cleared the outer wall, taking the moment to pry from the magical artillery to stuff the diamonds in her saddlebag, she saw the earth pony, unicorn, and cat statue simply break down the gate and continue to follow her. As Derpy flew, her pursuers dashed up the crater slope. Worse, the Pegasus and bird statues were closing the distance with an unnatural speed.
Oh, come on!
Derpy moaned.
Their wings don't even have feathers or skin or anything. This isn't even fair!
Looking back to check her pursuers, she saw Deathray boarding his strange old airship. He would soon join the chase. Derpy struck at the sky with her wings and propelled herself downwards as she cleared the crest of the crater, using the dive to put distance between herself and the bizarre, rusty golems that had hunted her. Soon she was above the treetops. This was, without a doubt, the second or third worst day Derpy had ever had. She was tired and hungry, and everything in the world seemed to want to eat or kill her. If she was overtaken by the iron Pegasi, she would be knocked to the ground. If the fall didn't kill her, she would be ripped to shreds by the statues below. To make matters worse, every time one of the unicorn statues got a solid line of sight on her, another ball of energy would hurtle upwards from the trees and explode somewhere within a stone's throw of her body. The frosting on the muffin?
If I don't find some way out of this, he'll fire that thing in Ponyville. All my friends, the doctor, Dinky.
Derpy's wings, sore and weary, somehow managed to find more strength. All the same, the terrible statues continued to gain. They were only a short ways away off her tail by now. Her mind raced, considering every option.
Can't go low. There are more of them down there. Can't go high either. They'll catch up even faster.
Boom! Ball of lightning exploded on her port flank, crackling as it disappeared. It caught a whiff of her own smoldering fur.
Now's the part where I think I can't get any worse. It can't get any worse, and then it gets worse.
As if in response to her thoughts, Derpy felt the hair all over her body standing up. She had felt the same sensation once before. It was the day she had permanently gone cross-eyed. She was helping build a simple thunderstorm, and she had gotten caught in the middle of the lightning bolt. She had never forgotten how it felt those moments before the strike. Derpy whipped her head around backwards and saw Wither's Deathray, his ship now at the rear of the pack. A vortex of purple-blue energy larger than the unicorn himself was swirling around his horn and was pointed directly at her. Derpy was stricken with distilled terror. Then, without warning, there occurred the rarest phenomenon known to pony kind. Derpyhooves got an idea.
What's a safe place to be in a thunderstorm?
Derpy spread her wings wide and pitched her body upwards to put on the brakes. The nearest Pegasus statue flew straight towards her, and just as it lowered its skull-like wrought iron head to knock her from the sky, she rolled over on her back, hooked her rear hooves onto its iron ribs, and pulled herself in amidst them. There was a thunderclap that seemed to make all the sky quake around her, and arcs of electricity coruscated all over the iron statue that surrounded her body.
Ouch!
Yelped Derpy in pain. She had not been shocked. The statue had conducted Deathray's lightning bolt away from her body. However, the electricity had heated the statue tremendously. She was more than obliged to kick herself free of it as it began to fall towards the treetops, its enchantment disrupted by Deathray's powerful spell. Her fur was blackened in several places where she'd been touching the statue, but the burns weren't serious.
Well, that's one, only half a dozen to go. And that's just the flyers. I won't last much longer like this.
Flying for dear life, Derpy realized that she didn't have long before Deathray charged another lightning bolt. The flying statues were no longer pursuing her so closely. Deathray, obviously in telepathic control of all his automatons, had no intention of allowing her to use the same trick to evade him twice. Another of the unicorn statue's lightning balls exploded just below her.
I can't fight this. I can't outfly it. What can I do? There has to be something!
It was then that ghastly gorge came back into view. The statues on the ground wouldn't be able to cross it. It was just a stroke of dumb luck, really.
I'll take dumb luck. It's the only kind I have.
Derpy dove for the opposite side of the canyon. If she could get into the trees, Deathray couldn't pursue her in his flying machine, and she might even be able to evade his flying statues. It was a long, fast dive with a lazy trajectory. There was nowhere near as suicidal as the game of Dragon Chicken had been, but it was still dangerous. Derpy would have to pick out an opening in the trees and align herself in a matter of seconds. Even as she began to do so, she felt her mane and fur stand on end. She heard the thunder only a moment away after the foliage had swallowed her up. She felt the heat and heard the shattering of some trees or other as the lightning vaporized the water inside it. Her ears rang, had been ringing since the first of the energy balls had exploded around her back at the mansion. All the same, for the first time since she had taken a diamond in her mouth, she thought she might have a chance to get away. She rocked and rolled and zigged and zagged between the trees, never looking back. Occasionally, she would hear the loud smash of one of the winged statues plowing into a tree trunk.
They might be fast, but they're not so nimble, are they?
After some time, the crashing noises stopped. Derpy chanced a quick glance behind, and was very nearly rewarded by hitting a tree herself. She was indeed alone, however, and all of the statues were gone, probably scattered throughout the forest in 1,000 pieces. Relieved, she allowed herself to glide downwards, and when she was within reach, she touched her hooves to the ground and jogged off her inertia. She knew better than to let herself be seen above the treetops. Deathray was still up there, somewhere. She would have to walk west until she emerged from the forest. It would take at least twice as long as flying. She wasn't excited about the prospect of trudging through this dark, dangerous place, but there was no other option. Derpy walked westwards for at least an hour, her stomach growling all the way. She kept hoping to pass a bush with some berries on it or some sort of fruit tree, but it seemed that such things didn't simply grow in the everfree forest. With no sunlight reaching the forest floor, there wasn't even any grass for her to graze, and right then she would have, degrading or not.
What do the animals eat?
She asked to no one in particular. Just then she heard a sound. It was a staccato thump that seemed to be growing slowly in volume, and it was coming closer behind her. A leaf on a nearby tree quivered with each distant hollow thump, and Derpy herself was beginning to notice the vibration. She didn't know what kind of creature was coming this way, but she knew one thing. It was big. Images of every colossal creature rumored to inhabit the forest flashed through Derpy's mind. Hydras, dragons, giant apes, ursas, great boars that stood twice as tall as Princess Celestia. Derpy's pulse quickened and her chest heaved, and she strained herself to keep her composure. She could run, or she could hide.
I'm too tired to run anymore. I'll never get away,
she thought. Fueled by adrenaline, Derpy quickened her pace as much as she could stand, and scanned the forest for anywhere that might serve to conceal her from whatever it was that was coming her way. The thumps grew louder, and the ground began to quake with each footfall. Frantically, she looked around for a place to hide. A small cave in the side of a low, eroded hillside caught her attention. It was just big enough for a pony to fit inside its entrance, and hopefully the creature wouldn't be able to follow her inside. She tucked her wings in close to her body, and wriggled her way through the tiny opening. The cave was cramped, dark, and musty. Roots hung from its ceiling, and its walls bore the soft, eroded remains of old claw marks. It had been the den of some kind of animal at once. A little ways in, Derpy found a small chamber where there was just enough room for her to turn and get a view of what was outside. When she had, she wished she hadn't, for what she saw was more awful than any Ursa or Hydra. It was the remaining statues. Somehow they had gotten across the canyon. A great cat prowled by, followed by an earth pony statue and a skeletal iron wolf. But most horrifying of all was what brought up the rear. It was Deathray's airship. Its balloon was mysteriously gone, and it was stomping through the forest on a pair of mechanical bird-like legs. Derpy ducked back as far into the tiny cave as she possibly could. As she backed up, her right rear hoof landed on a rock the size of a grapefruit and rolled out from under her. She fell back onto her chest, belly and haunches, and lay there just frozen in fear. The rock sat mockingly in front of her, quivering yellow eyes. She couldn't run, she had nowhere to go, and her mind was empty of ideas, and her body empty of energy. All she could do was wait, and hope she had not been heard. The thudding of the flying machine's chicken feet had stopped, and for a moment Derpy was certain she had been discovered. Then she heard Deathray's voice.
I can sense the diamond. It's around here. Look for it, you idiots. And if you find that google-eyed gray Pegasus, bring her to me.
Derpy gritted her teeth and rolled her face into the dirt, a silent gesture of frustration. He knew a gem-finding spell. Of course he knew a gem-finding spell. He was an old unicorn who had spent his entire life studying magic. How could he not know a gem-finding spell? And of course he was more than powerful enough to levitate the statues over the gorge. Hiding in this cave had guaranteed she'd be caught. Derpy had never felt so stupid in all her life, and that was impressive.
Come out, Miss Hooves. I believe I found you.
Deathray punctuated his gleeful declaration with a kick above the cave's entrance from one of the machine's giant feet. Dirt showered from the ceiling, and Derpy squeaked in surprise and fear. There was no hiding herself now. Chapter 4. The greatest day of her life.
Why, look! I was right!
Withers Deathray cackled with sadistic joy at the sound of Derpy's terrified voice.
Hide and seek is over now. I win.
Derpy didn't move. She didn't even think. She was numb, staring with her crossed eyes at the rock which had trapped her.
I'm not coming in after you, Miss Hooves. I can just collapse the cave if you would like. I can always have my pets dig out the diamond for me.
Another kick, another shower of dirt.
Of course, I'd rather you save me the time and trouble. Be a good little filly now and just bring me my diamond, and I'll let you go. You might even be able to make it to Ponyville with time enough to warn every pony. Not that anyone would believe a cross-eyed delivery pony spouting nonsense about old insane unicorns with death rays. Then again, you don't have to tell them anything. You could just run away. You seem to be quite good at that.
Deathray cackled at his own joke, and then spat the words.
Now come out!
As he augured his machine's bird foot once again into the hillside. This time the kick was especially hard, and Derpy was coated mane to tail in a layer of dirt and sand. She screamed, more in anger than in fear, and Deathray laughed maniacally.
I'll give you 1 minute to decide, and then I'm bringing the roof down on your gray little head.
Derpy shook her head to clear some of the dirt from her mane. It was over. If she just gave him the diamond, she might have time to get Dinky to get out of town.
No, I won't let this happen. I have to make a break for it.
Shoot all, and she knew it. The entrance of the cave would be surrounded with the statues by now, and Deathray could have his horn pointed at her. She would make 4 steps.
Stupid Derpy, stupid cave, stupid diamond, stupid rock! The rock!
Derpy's face lit up.
What was that, Miss Hooves? I didn't quite hear you.
The rock, still right in front of Derpy's face, was almost exactly the same size as the diamond. It might fool Deathray for just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, right, Derps.
It was a poorly conceived plan, even for her, but she had to try something.
I'm coming out. Just let me get myself loose. I'm a little stuck.
You have until I lose my patience.
Derpy flopped around awkwardly in the enclosed space, quickly swapping the diamond to her muffin bag, and then she dropped the rock into her delivery bag. She was just about to close the flap when she noticed her clipboard and remembered that she would need to give it to Boxy. It seemed like a foolish thing to try even worry about it at a time like this, but she quickly took it out and placed it alongside the diamond in the other bag.
Okay, I'm coming out now.
As Derpy emerged from the cave, covered in dust, she realized that the situation was even more dire than she had supposed. The statues were everywhere, at least 24 of them. She had been wrong in supposing that she wouldn't have made it 4 steps.
Wouldn't have made it too.
The statues closed in on her slowly, and her blood ran cold.
Now be good, children. Miss Hooves has given us the most entertaining day we've had in decades, after all.
The statues halted in their tracks, and Derpy began to remove her saddlebags.
Oh no!
Well, hold on.
Wait, this is Deathray. Sorry.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh no, not like that. Bring it up here. I want you to give it to me personally.
Derpy could tell, just from the sound of his voice, that he was smiling his toothless superior smirk. Derpy flapped her wings and lifted herself up to his level of the contraption deck. It was much like a large boat, about 20 paces long, with a wheel and many levers on a raised deck at its rear. Deathray stood amidst these controls, manipulating them via his impressive telekinetic ability. Derpy lit one on the prow and began to remove her saddlebags.
No. Bring it here. To me.
The tone of Deathray's last 2 words reminded Derpy of her own voice when she was scolding Dinky. She was really starting to hate this little evil unicorn. She walked sternward towards the port side of the 2 staircases, which led to the control deck. On On the way, she passed a huge hatch, which she assumed must conceal the hot air balloon that held the machine aloft while it was in flight. Slowly, she ascended the staircase one by one. When she reached the top, she stopped and removed her saddlebags. Deathray, purely for his own twisted amusement, rolled the airship's wheel to starboard, and the deck pitched itself violently so that Derpy began to slide towards him. And as he slid, beating her wings to keep from falling, the wheel stopped glowing. Released from Deathray's telekinetic grip, it rolled automatically back to a neutral position, leveling out the deck just so that she stopped sliding right in front of the wicked little unicorn.
My diamond, please.
Derpy dropped her saddlebags, put her hoof on the belt, and slid her delivery bag off by her teeth, and then dropped it at Deathray's hooves. It hit the deck with an audible thunk. Quickly, she picked up the remaining saddlebag, strapped it around her waist. Deathray watched her calmly, still smirking. Once her remaining saddlebag was secure, Derpy turned to go.
You don't actually think I'd let you walk away before I see it, do you?
The same smirking, self-assured tone pervaded Deathray's voice.
It's in there.
Derpy
You're
said.
lying, and I can hear it in your voice. And moreover, I can sense the diamond in the bag you're still wearing. I guess it would have been too much to expect an intelligent plan from some pony named Derpy. Did you actually think this cute little prank would work?
Derpy turned around slowly, her face contorted into a mask of wall-eyed contempt. She had had enough of this psychotic little runt.
Well, no, but this might.
Derpy reached out and rolled the wheel downwards with her left foreleg. As the deck pitched, Deathray stumbled, too concerned with keeping his balance to do anything about the spinning wheel. Derpy lifted herself off the deck with several quick oscillations of her wings, and putting her forehoofs on the back of Deathray's head, shoved it forwards, jamming his horn into the spokes of the spinning wheel. The wheel stopped. Deathray's horn was locked tightly in place against the pedestals by the tension of whatever mechanism made it automatically turn to the center when released. Derpy half ran, half flew up the listing deck, stumbling over and activating a random lever as she passed it. The chicken legs began to backpedal, and the deck rolled and pitched beneath the two ponies. As she hopped over to the railing to stand on the side of the airship, now more horizontal to the earth than the deck, she heard Deathray's voice.
Help!
Derpy looked down through the railing. Deathray hung helpless, suspended by his horn.
The fuel will ignite when it falls! I'll be cooked alive!
He was flailing his legs, trying to free himself from the wheel's grip.
Please!
His voice cracked, and he sobbed in genuine terror. Something in Derpy wanted her to leap into the sky and leave Deathray to his fate, but something else, the better part of her, simply would not let her do it. She was a mother, and this tiny, terrified, and now weeping unicorn with a squeaky voice, old and evil though he may be, simply reminded her too much, somehow, of her little purple foal. Derpy's eyes straightened up, and without a thought he leapt to the railing and slid down next to Deathray. Her body bent back so far that her haunches almost touched the deck as she slid. She braced herself against the wheel's pedestal and forced her rear hoof against the spoke. She gave it enough slack to free Deathray from its grip, and then she wrapped her forelegs around his middle and hammered at the air with her wings. She had barely cleared the deck when the machine finally backed up into a twisted old oak tree, toppling to the ground. There was a silence for a few moments. Then it exploded into a giant fireball. The blast wave pushed Derpy and Deathray high into the air and sent them over end. Somehow, Derpy managed to not drop the little unicorn. Derpy gained control of her body's position just before they hit the ground, and she managed to place herself between the old pony and the cold, hard earth. They slid some distance before Derpy felt her back slam into something that was all at once punishingly hard and mercifully soft, like a hard plate that gave that gave when her body pressed against it. She dropped Deathray to the ground and sat there, her back against the strange wall that had halted her skid. She was utterly exhausted and in every kind of pain imaginable. A quick wiggle of her wings and legs confirmed that she was still whole and able to move, and Deathray was likewise getting to his hooves.
Well, I am impressed, Miss Hooves.
There was not a hint of irony in Deathray's voice.
You really are something special.
Derpy did not respond. She just rested against a strange, soft, hard surface, which, curiously, seemed to be slowly expanding and contracting.
All the same, however, you must understand that I cannot simply let you walk away with my life's work.
The unicorn's glasses had fallen off in the impact, and he was slowly sliding his hoofs over the ground in an effort to find them.
But I just saved your life.
Derpy shook her head, exasperated, and as she did so, something horrifying came into the corner of her eye.
I know, and I'm very grateful. Now I'll be able to complete my creation.
His hoof was getting close to the cracked pair of glasses which lay nearby. Until he found them, though, only Derpy would know that the surface they had come to rest against was the same green dragon that had earlier that day tried to eat her.
And it's still alive,
thought the cross-eyed Pegasus. What was worse, it was waking up. She could feel it rolling against her back, and she pushed herself forward and onto her hooves.
Now, don't even think about trying to run away. I've had quite enough of this.
Deathray statues had found them, and now they were forming a semicircle around the ponies, preventing Derpy from moving away from the green behemoth that was even then coming to its senses. She thought about flying, but quickly realized that if she tried, one of the iron unicorns would strike her from the air with a spell. She was trapped. Again. Deathray continued speaking as he searched for his spectacles.
I will repay your favor by letting you go, but only if you give me my diamond.
Derpy's eyes were fixated on the dragon's mammoth green head, which lay nearby, curled around beside its semi-conscious body. Its face was covered in scratches, and it had an enormous black eye. It was the other eye, however, that popped open at Deathray's use of the word diamond. At that moment, Deathray found his glasses.
Ah!
He turned towards Derpy, even as he lifted the glasses telekinetically to his face.
Now,
He said,
will you please give me my diamond, or do I have to demonstrate the spell upon which my death rays principle is founded?
The unicorn's horn seemed to shift out of its usual focus as he spoke, like a picture taken with a cheap camera. As it did so, the dragon's huge nostrils expanded in a mighty sniff. His nose turned towards Derpy, and his one open eye fixed itself upon her. Deathray still had not noticed him, and was so intent was he on charging up his death spell.
Here, it's yours.
Derpy wasn't sure if she was speaking to the dragon or the unicorn as she frantically dug the diamond out of her bag and pitched it to the ground.
Well,
Deathray said, his horn returning to focus.
you're not as stupid as you look, Miss Hooves.
Derpy stared wall-eyed at the dragon as Deathray craned his head down and took the diamond in his teeth.
No pony is as stupid as I look.
She said. Deathray lifted his head, the diamond in his mouth, and began to turn into the opposite direction. Halfway through his turn, he came face to face with the dragon. His eyes went wider than Derpy's own, and the diamond dropped from his mouth. Before it had even hit the ground, the dragon struck like a cobra. Deathray and the gem disappeared in a crunch that resonated through Derpy's bones. The statues crumbled instantaneously to the ground, their weird life force extinguished with that of their creator. The dragon turned its eye towards the Pegasus. Her face bore a small, peaceful smile, which did not quite reach her eyes.
Mama loves you, Dinky.
said Derby softly.
Be a good girl.
She rocked gently left and right, overcome with a surreal sense of exhaustion, apathy, and satisfaction. Ponyville and Dinky would both have a future, and Derpy Hooves wouldn't be a part of it.
Hmm?
The dragon raised a brow above its functional eye inquisitively.
Nothing. You can eat me now.
Why would I eat you?
The dragon's voice was loud, even at a conversational volume, and had a timbre like gravel grating on steel.
You smell like dirt and burnt hair and cake or something. Disgusting. All I wanted was the diamond. That little fool should have had the sense not to come between a dragon and his meal.
The dragon lifted itself to its feet, pressed its huge wings against the air, and slowly it lifted into the sky, and it was gone. Derpy did not think, she did not move, she did not weep for joy nor shout for it, she just breathed. Derpy Hoof stood alone in the everfree forest, and breathed. True to his word, Boxy had allowed Derpy to go home early when she had returned with a signed clipboard. He had chastised her for losing her delivery bag, but compared to what she had endured that day, it seemed mild. She had gone home to bathe the sweat and dirt off her exhausted body, and was now trotting towards the schoolhouse. Getting off work early meant she could meet Dinky when she got out of class. She'd had enough time to make herself a sandwich, but after this day, it had hardly filled her up in her roaring stomach. She was tempted to let Dinky walk home with her friends as usual, and head straight for Sugar Cube Corner. But for some reason, food didn't seem so important at the moment, not even muffins. Just as she arrived at the door, she heard the chiming of the bell, and Shirley's voice declaring class dismissed. A dozen excited foals dashed past her on their way home, and all along, and last of all emerged Dinky trotting beside her teacher. Shirley's fuchsia face brightened at the sight of her pupil's mother. Imitator?
I'll take it.
Oh, was that me? Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, hello, Miss Hooves. Short day at work, I see. I hope it was a good one.
Derpy paused before responding.
I think it might have been the greatest day of my life.
That's how I feel every time the school bell rings.
Shirley cantered off down the path back to town.
Mama! Mama, I made you something!
Dinky ran up to her mother, shut her eyes tight, and bit her lower lip. Her tiny horn glowed, and out of her school bag emerged a glowing piece of paper. It bore a crude crayon image of a grey Pegasus with a yellow mane and tail, bubbles for a cutie mark, and a pair of crossed yellow eyes. She was balancing a muffin on her hoof. Derpy took the paper in her teeth and tucked it back into Dinky's school bag.
I love it. Keep it where it'll be safe until we get home, and I'll put it somewhere where I can see it every day.
She nuzzled her daughter and then pressed her snout into her purple neck and rubbed it back and forth, tickling her mercilessly. Dinky giggled and hopped away from her mother's playful attack.
Can we go to Sugar Cube Corner?
The grey Pegasus gleamed.
I was just about to suggest the same thing.
Dinky shouted,
I'll race you!
and then ran off in a cloud of dust, headed for the bakery. Derpy Hoof sighed through a weary smile. She giggled to herself as she watched her daughter's awkward, short-legged gallop for a few moments more. Then she ran after her. The end. Whew, that was quite the story.
Indeed, it was.
Did you guys enjoy?
I got so... Okay, I'm colorblind, so I got so mixed up over time.
Oh, I didn't even know.
That's okay.
Well, I can take it into account. Are there any colors that are particularly distinct for you? Because then I can just use those to mark for your lines next time around.
I have tritanopia, which is blue-yellow color blindness, and basically the dinky and the derpy lines are exactly the same for me.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, fortunately, they also. I think I would figure they would also sound quite similar, so that helps. But so blue and yellow color blindness, is that you can't see those colors, or is it that you can only see those colors?
I can't see yellow altogether, and then blues and greens get easily mixed up
Okay.
real easily.
Okay, so Cheerly's line in that case is very bright and distinguishable, as are Death
Sort of.
and Death Ray's lines, which were kind of pinkish.
So the closer the color is to red, the easier I can see it.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind when I mark those next stories. Yay, learning!
Yay!
Woots.
That sounded so enthusiastic. I feel like I had been reading too fast because I fumbled in more places than I would have liked. But oh well. It's the first show in years, so I thought it went pretty well. And I liked the story.
Mm-hmm.
Pats on the back to all of us.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. Any closing words or remarks before we cut the live stream?
I got nothing. Hope you all enjoyed.
Exactly. That. What he
Yay!
said. You're still waking up. Oh, did you get interrupted, by the way?
Interrupted?
Yeah, by people coming on, knocking on your door and such.
Not at all.
Yay! Because if you had, we hadn't noticed. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Then that's that. Be sure to look up Daft Punk and Imitator on wherever places you may find them. For example, in our description. And yeah, we'll be online on the 1st of September this year. Because that's the start of the new school year. And I think it won't be too busy for most people. Like the 4th of July was really busy for everybody. Because, well, on the US side anyway, because, you know, everyone wants to celebrate, and as well they should. But, like, the 1st of September is the start of the new school year. I'm not sure who would be celebrating, like, en masse. So, yeah,
You never know.
1st September, and then probably after that is Nightmare Night. See you guys then.